Andy, thank you so much for being here and getting to share a little bit about Wild Common, not just the brand, but as a whole, this like movement that you're doing, and talk a little bit about your story, about the photography, the storytelling, the athlete, and the mountain stuff. That I'd love to talk about that too. But most importantly, the efforts that Wild Common has been doing in sustainability before the brand was even there. So thanks so much for being here. And yeah, I think let's talk about Wild Common for a little bit.
Let's talk about
Um,
Wild Common, Lucas.
yeah.
I've been waiting to hear you say that. Slap the bottle. Let's talk about Wild Common. Let's
I
talk
know,
about
right?
tequila.
I put it right here behind me.
Yeah. And so you got a bottle of the new Still Strength down in
I do.
Michoacan. I sent you a bottle, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I got a bottle of the Steel Strength and a bottle of the 40 ABV2. I think that was lot three,
Lot
or
no, you got lot 5, and that's
lot five.
42%
Lot five.
ABV. Yep.
40. That's
Yep.
right.
So
That's right.
we have two Blancos right now, one Repo and a Mezcal.
Hmm.
You got the
That's right.
50% Still Strength, which I adore.
Yeah. Oh,
And I don't know if
so
you've
good.
had that yet. And
Yeah,
then the
yeah.
42% Blanco.
Yeah, well, those both are great, and I love that you sent it to Mexico too, because we were there and we're like really trying to educate our family there about good quality agave spirits, right? Like, unfortunately, we've talked about how agave spirits, quality agave spirits, are not really, I don't know if the right word is like, um, not respected, but just not doesn't have that. I don't know how to say it without like being, and we can cut this out too. But people are just not appreciative of good quality agave spirits, especially in like small towns in Michoacan. So to be able to, for you to send those bottles there and for me to get to share with the family and talk a little bit about the process and why this is good was awesome. So I appreciate that.
And that like single soundbite is the impetus of why the brand started. There's
Mm,
2,612 brands, and when I was traveling through Mexico, visiting friends, we can get into some of my backstory in a minute too.
hmm.
Um, was sitting in El Arenal, sipping on Cascaoin's products. It was the day David Sero's Earth and Pit was being used for the Anniversario production,
Okay.
and my mind was blown. And it was like, I want to bring this home and bring people together and talk about this and storytell about this. And that is my background as a storyteller, as a photographer. And I got this sort of like surge of inspiration to do that. And at the end of the day, that's the best part, is kind of when like the cameras are off and you're not doing reviews, there's no hashtag ad thing going on. You remove the commercial component and you get to just imbibe with friends and connect as a community. Like that's, to me, the best part of it.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. I love, of course, tequila is amazing, agave spirits are amazing, but getting to share and the memories that you create around that and the conversations that come because of a good quality agave spirits and talking about the process is like my favorite part of being in this industry as well.
Yeah, and it can get foggy. People have
Yeah.
gone overboard in the past, and I think there's still just a huge gap, which you're seeing, and you're able to help educate people. I'm doing the same through process, through transparency. There's a huge gap in, uh, I shouldn't bang on any brands, but some of the
Hmm.
bigger incumbents that maybe we all drank in high school and got really sick, um, and traditionally produce additive free agave spirits, not just tequila either.
Right.
There's a huge gap there in knowledge, and a huge opportunity in my mind to share that with other people. And so that's what we've tried to do.
That's awesome. And now, yeah, I would love to hear a little bit more about how Wild Comment started, not just the brand, but like, the story of you going to Mexico to document sustainability and the efforts that you did there. And I know you worked a lot in the Raicilla country, with planting all that. So I'd love to hear more about how that led to Wild Comment.
Yeah, I got to go back a little further to give you some context. I'll try and condense it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
after college, I moved out to Yosemite National Park in California. Cut my teeth there, climbing on the big walls of El Capitan and Half Dome. I don't know if you've ever been, but it's amazing.
Yeah, I need to go.
And really drew inspiration from being outdoors, and then started to share that as a teacher with people, as a professional mountain guide. So I've been based in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and was working as a professional mountain guide, a company called Exum Mountain Guides, for a long time. And that tapped into my passion for being outdoors, teaching people, inspiring people, pushing people as well.
Hmm.
And then I started taking pictures along the way, and I sold a couple pictures. One day I got a phone call, literally like a voicemail. Hey, Andy, it's your buddy. Just seeing if you want to come to Mount Everest. Give me a call. Click, and he
Whoa.
hangs up. Or no, if you want to go to Mount Everest on an assignment for Nat Geo, give
Wow.
me a call back. And I'm like, what the is he talking about? So that led to a career with National Geographic, and that comes with a level of journalistic integrity, which
Cool.
equals honesty. So as a journalist, at least with National Geographic, you need to turn in every single picture you take, even the frames that are black or the blurry ones. And
Oh,
they do
wow.
that to ensure that there's no photoshopping and you're being totally honest with the story that you're documenting. And so I brought all of that DNA into this project, and hopefully in some of our marketing material and our labels, you can see that nod to transparency and honesty. It's truly like part of the DNA of the brand. And in between assignments was traveling down in Mexico, visiting some friends. They drove from Colorado down to Oaxaca with their two twin boys and their dog for 6 months. And so they lived down there for 6 months, and the boys were in school, which was pretty cool. Two little gringos,
Yeah.
learning Spanish the real way, in school immersion.
Right.
Um, and then I went up to Jalisco, and I reached out to a number of our acquaintances when I was in Jalisco, because I was just gone down the rabbit hole of agave spirits. Why can't I find spirits like this where I live in Wyoming? And I need to go see how this is made and what's going on. And so I met up with David Suro, with Grover, and end up at Cascoin the day Aniversario was produced. This is my first exposure to tequila production ever.
Wow.
And,
And what a
the
first day.
facility, oh my God, the distillery itself is like stepping back in time, and instantly it's like, okay, this is different. This comes with generations of respect and tradition. It's not beakers and lab coats and science. There's an element of sort of serendipity and funk
Hmm.
from
Yeah.
the machines, from the rust, from the open air fermentation, the yeast, and was just so inspired. And that was the initial trip. That was the introduction to the world of tequila.
Wow. That's awesome. It was with the connection with David Suter that you were able to go visit the Mesonte production with
Yeah,
Hapo.
yeah. And so this was pre-COVID, and I wanted to tell a story. I'd seen some stories shot about tequila production and
Hmm.
sustainability and agriculture. That's a bigger story, talking about avocados, anything else. But
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to dig into agave spirits and the sustainability component, specifically in the world of tequila. This was, like I said, just before COVID. And
Hmm.
so I wanted to put together a pitch, which would require some photos and a little bit of research on the ground. So you reach out to, Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi down
That's
there, which
right.
is David Suro and Don Salvador at Cascoin, Guillermo Erickson Celza from Fortaleza, Grover, and everybody sort of points fingers at within that small circle, and they say, you got to go meet this guy, you
Right.
got to go meet this guy. And so was really opened, or had doors opened, to have the privilege to be able to see this incredible process. And for those who are listening, who are asking, what is this
Yeah.
anniversario process? Do you want to explain it? I know you know it.
Yeah, it's
And I
actually
see a
one of those
bottle.
bottles
Do I
that.
see a
Yeah,
bottle?
yeah. That's it. That's the
Yeah,
bottle right there.
there you go.
So perfect timing too. I just got this bottle like in Mexico last week.
No
Remy
way.
gifted me this. Yeah, Remy gifted me a
Oh,
bottle,
wow.
man. And for those listening to, Remy is just probably has the best palate in all the tequila world. She is so respected, and so many brands come up to her. And she's actually doing the tasting notes for the Ocho Puntas that we got to blend together there. So Remy gifted me this bottle. So Remy, thank you so much. But yeah,
Wow.
so the aniversario was just it was a way that David Sudo and Chava really brought back what tequila used to be before tequila was tequila, before when it was called vino de mezcal. So it was done very much like what mezcal is done today. So it's the agaves are cooked in an underground pit lined with volcanic rocks for a few days. The milling process is done by hand, so the ancestral style where it's literally these wooden mallets that they're just crushing for hours and hours. It's such a labor intensive process. And then, that is then fermented in wooden tank and then distilled in the Filipino still, which is a wooden still. And yeah, it's one of my favorite tequilas ever. I think it's become one of the most coveted tequilas out there. Um, and and which kind of led to for Cascawing's like early special release. So then came Cerro de Luz, and then came 11 Once Bricks, which are the three bottles up here.
Yeah, you
So
got
yeah, to
the
be able,
full lineup.
yeah, finally. So to be able to like for that to be your first introduction into the process of tequila making, that's like going back in time without seeing what it is today. That's pretty special, man.
It was an incredible privilege, and I know that I told that to them now, and I then returned back to the States and had some of these images. I can send some through to you afterwards. Had some of these images. I
Yeah,
sent them all to Benjamin Rosales and to Chava and said, please use these for yourselves. Create awareness
yeah,
about what you're doing. I don't.
hmm
I'm not selling these. I'm not doing anything with it. A couple more months went by, and I just reached out and said, hey, would love to talk about telling your story.
yeah,
Um, what do you think about setting up a call and
hmm
potentially partnering on a brand? And that came with the premise of like, we need to do something different. We're not
hmm
slapping a label on family juice, and your name has to be on the front of the bottle, which it
yeah,
is.
yeah,
And we're gonna fully do it right in terms of transparency on the back label and give credit where credit's due. What do you think? And they said, sure, let's go for it. And then, global pandemic started, a
right.
couple topes along the way, a couple speed bumps, and here we are. We're a couple batches in.
Yeah,
We've got multiple SKUs getting incredible reviews, and I'm just really I guess I don't want to say I'm thankful for the pandemic, but I've been taught patience through
yeah,
the world of agave from Don
yeah,
Salvador
hmm
and his son Chava, um, from both David Suro, from Grover, from the Maguey, from
hmm
the agave,
right,
um, the maturation process in barrels. Like, I'm not the most patient person, and I've been taught patience, and the extended time that we had to focus on quality
right,
during the pandemic um, was kind of a blessing. And
yeah,
so everything we're putting out is a little bit higher proof. So you have a 42% Blanco. Most people
hmm
go 40. We have a 43% Repo, 100 days in Buffalo Trace barrels. Most people go 40%, a little bit
right.
shorter. We have a still strength Blanco that's 50% ABV. I'd say kind of for experts only. It's just a rush of agave of flavors.
Yeah,
It's an incredible experience, and a mezcal too. And none of those things kind of would have happened unless you know the pandemic occurred. We had time to slow down, reevaluate, um,
yeah,
and really be patient.
yeah. No, I get it, and I think I was the pandemic taught me those kinds of things too. And, it's why I get to do this content and do this now is because, both my jobs that closed and it was one of those times like, okay, what do I focus on? And as a bartender, there's not much that you could have done during all that, which it's like 3 years today, right? Which is crazy. Um, but, like teaching that patience and having that time to like really focus on what you love, I think for me, I can definitely relate to what you're saying. And I remember, like, when Wild Common first came out, I had just started doing content and talking about, my thoughts and feelings about the industry that I've had built up as I, started really getting into agave spirits as a bartender. And for me, that path of like falling in love with it really was getting to go to Fortaleza. So the first time I got to go to Fortaleza, I was working with a chef here in LA that was really still really good friends with Guillermo. So we got to go there and see it in person, seeing that production. It was kind of that switch for me too, that like, I really fell in love and then started getting to share that as, COVID started happening and sharing more content and telling the story about that. I remember when Wild Common first came out, and what really stood out to me was that, the Rosales family were the stars. Like they were the ones in the bottle. You always, talked about why it was there. It was always so transparent, and getting to then see, the sustainability things that you were working on before the brand started. It wasn't just like you said, slapping a sticker on family juice and calling it your own. It was really paying homage to that. And one of the things that stood out to me, I think, was one of the first times we talked, and you said that you were coming out with the mezcal, but you weren't going to do wild agaves because wild agaves should be, in Oaxaca for the people that are doing mezcal for generations. And that was one of the things that really spoke to me as part of like, okay, this brand is legit. Andy is legit. This is great. And then when I got to try the juice, it was like, oh man, this is, it was incredible tequila as well. So, um, Yeah, it's awesome. And I also wanted to touch a little bit on just people that are listening that with the efforts that we're talking about at ICEA and Mesonte, that you got to go there. Mesonte is a nonprofit organization that works, really to save the culture behind agave spirits in Mexico, especially in Jalisco. So they work a lot with the ICEA producers, but they also have, things coming from Michoacan, from Puebla, from Oaxaca as well. And, they do so much into bringing back agaves, and making sure that the agaves are producing sexually. So, studying bats and bees and birds that are pollinating all over Jalisco instead of having clones, which is the majority of what tequila is done today, right? This giant stalk shoots up from the agave, and the birds and the bats will pollinate it in that way. What's being done mostly now is just these offshoots or the huelos that come out on the ground. They're clone of the mother plant, and they just clone them out, which is what we see mostly today. Um, so yeah, and I would love to hear a little bit more about that too. Like, how is it going to these areas in Jalisco? And I still haven't been able to go there. I would love to go visit Hapo and all the other distilleries there, all the other palenqueros there, the raicilleros there. But how was that experience of getting to go there and do the greenhouses that you guys have and those things in Jalisco?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm listening to you and I'm like, and this is why people fall in love with agave
Yeah.
spirits. Like when you get down to the impact it has culturally, the
Hmm.
plants, the pollinators. I mean, there's so many layers of appreciation where a consumer can fall into this category and just go deeper and deeper and deeper. You've been the first one to say that you're not an expert and
Hmm.
that there's more to learn.
Yeah.
And that student mindset of going down the rabbit hole even further has kept me going. And that's what I think I have a responsibility to storytell that,
Right.
and to give back to the communities we're working with. And so, a little bit on what you're referencing, and then zoomed out even further on some of the
Yeah.
sustainability stuff we're doing. All of these plants take 6 years minimum to grow. Blue Weber agave can be 8 years. Some of these agaves we're talking about can be 15 to 20 years. Um, there are also endemic species in the state of Jalisco in particular. There's a cenizo that's at risk of extinction,
Right.
and a bonete tree that's used in the production of mezcal that's kind of being overharvested in some areas. A lot of the younger generation will leave rural areas in search of work and better money and more opportunity elsewhere. And Pedro Jimenez from this nonprofit Mazante has done an incredible job of buying a percentage, less than half, of the mezcal that's produced by these communities. The other half stays in the community to be consumed and
Right.
celebrated for the community, which I think is amazing.
I do too.
But the money, the greenhouses, the sustainability initiatives that he has going on is allowing people to choose what they want for their future. Do you want to stick around? Do you want to produce mezcal? Do you want more plants in the ground? Do you want a rainwater catchment system that is water filtrating? What do you need?
Yeah.
And I guess my experience, and my most recent trip a couple of weeks ago, to San Luis Amatlan in Oaxaca, taught me that everything is gray.
Hmm.
Like, I'm a guest, I'm a tall gringo, uh, and nothing is black and white in this industry. And so, yeah, there can be good and bad, but there's no one size fits all. There's no one answer for everybody. You can't say, well, our sustainability initiatives are X, and that's what everybody gets, because everybody needs something different.
Right.
And I came home from my last trip, again, like every trip, humbled and being
Yeah.
like, man, like, I have so much to learn. Like, it's a matter of asking better questions, asking
Hmm.
what communities need, asking how you can give back, asking how you can support, asking if they want support.
Right.
Um, and so, to answer some of those calls for support, one of which was through Mazante, it was to build a bunch of greenhouses to help save species that would go extinct. So before we sold a bottle, um, I felt like it was important to put my money where my mouth is in regards to sustainability, like I've told you,
Hmm.
and focus on cultivated, semi-cultivated agaves, um, and to build greenhouses to empower local communities to grow their own and to have access to more maguey in the future. And so we built a bunch of greenhouses with Pedro and Jalisco. I have other capital deployed in Oaxaca. We're doing the same thing, which I sent you some photos. Most of this stuff we're never going to procure. We're never going to sell. It's being reinvested back into rural Mexico. And then we've worked with the Rosales family, who's producing the mezcal that we're putting out into the market. And we've got a greenhouse in El Arenal for them as well. They have a bunch of family land, and so things are being grown from seed. Blue Weber agave is being grown from seed to help with the biodiversity of the plant, to allow it to adapt to a changing climate. Those seeds will go back in their family land and will be allowed to reproduce sexually. So that genetic information gets passed around. Yeah. I know all this gets a little nerdy for people who are like, what are these guys talking about? But it's stuff that we're passionate about. Yeah, and it's helping ensure the future of what is actually a monoculture crop. If there was a blight, if there was a freeze, if there were bugs that somehow infected, or bacteria or something, the plants need to be a little bit stronger. If you keep cloning them, they don't adapt to the warmer summers and the colder winters that are being experienced, or the rainier, like you've been down there when it's just unleashed. Right. The plants need to adapt as well to a changing climate. And so all of those are things that I haven't like beat my chest about. And I don't even know if you've seen any of those photos on social or on our website or anything, but that's all part of the DNA of the brand. And that comes from being, owner operated. Right. We're small and we're really passionate about what we're doing.
Yeah. And you can tell, man. And like for me, sustainability is such like a tricky word that's being thrown out so much in the industry, And again, I also don't want to just badmouth brands, but I get emails every day with different brands that they want me to sample their mezcal or the tequila, and I'd say 9 out of 10 of those are like, we are focused on sustainability, and I was like, what is sustainability, right? Is it possible to be sustainable in the market that we have today? And how many bottles are you making? And what does it mean to be sustainable? Is it that you're just replanting agaves? What about all the firewood that you're using? Where is that coming from? And all the water, where's the water source coming from? So it's something that is so complicated. And I think that is a word that just gets thrown out so much that it's refreshing to see somebody that's actually in, boots on the ground, and really getting to see and being involved, and not just, again, doing the thing that's like, oh yeah, we replanted a couple of agaves, we're being sustainable. It's the efforts that you're doing.
Check the box.
Exactly. I can say it's sustainable, right? Yeah. And the word has lost its meaning. But then we get to see some brands that are actually doing these efforts, like Wild Common, or the mezcal brands that I have to say, like La Locura and Real Minero, that are really focusing on these studies of agaves and bringing back agaves that are extinct, or saving agaves that are in the brink of extinction, because of this crazy demand that we're experiencing, right? I think it was Grover that put out a video today saying how many brands came out in last year, and this year is probably going to beat that, and it's those things like, I get people asking me too, what do I need to start a brand? It's like, well, maybe do you need to start the brand, right? But with the efforts that Wild Common is doing, and I think also the storytelling in you, I'm a big fan of storytelling as well. And through your pictures, and I think through the background that you have, talking about what Wild Common has been doing before selling a bottle is awesome to hear. So yeah, hopefully one day we'll be able to go there together and see that in person.
We will, for sure. I mean, and that it circles back to the storytelling component, like you were saying, as a director before this on commercial stuff and documentary stuff. The saying is, show me, don't tell me. It's let the scene unfold and show me moving pictures. Yeah. Don't lay it out for me, don't tell me. And so, like, if people are gonna have claims against sustainability or how much they care, you're like, cool, right, send me a zip folder, I would love to see that.
Exactly.
Love to see what you got going on.
So true.
There's definitely a lot of greenwashing for sure. And again, my job isn't to bang on people. I think there's plenty of that going on. My job is to help create awareness about all the stuff I see on the shelf behind your shoulders, which that's a culture,
right?
And if we can elevate the conversation around that and appreciation, I mean, Going to restaurants, there's $28 glasses of wine,
Right.
there's $35 glasses of wine. I mean, a glass of mezcal can be 40
Right.
bucks easy all
Yep.
day. It's how it's delivered. It's the story it's told around it. I mean, I've seen you deliver stuff, the company Tuyo with those
Yeah. Yeah.
copitas. I've seen like beautiful presentations you've done with incredible cocktails. I'm like, that's a $28
Mm-hmm.
cocktail all day. And I think the market is starting to give the agave spirits appreciation that it's long
Yeah.
overdue. And that's why I say, and I think you're a guide, you know, you're a guide for a lot of people, giving them access and on an airplane when a lot of people aren't going to be able to book
Right.
that ticket. They're not going to be able to go meet these characters.
Right.
And when we see your stories, we see you at bars, you know, or sipping underground in a cave, perhaps after a 5-year anniversary. You know, it's a privilege to hear and understand, okay, like this is the
Yeah,
subculture. These are the new movers and shakers. This is the young blood in the industry.
I appreciate it.
And yeah, it's super exciting. It injects me with more like, I don't want to say enthusiasm, but it's like a
Mm-hmm.
responsibility I have to follow through on the commitment that I've
Mm-hmm.
made. And so far, we've been pretty damn uncompromising. It's been centered around transparency and quality. And that's coming through in all of our reviews. I
For
mean,
sure.
you know, you go to Tequila Matchmaker, you go to a bunch of liquor stores. If people have had it, if they've tried it, if they've sipped it, you know, it's going toe to toe against some of the biggest brands on earth, and that's something
Absolutely.
I'm really proud of.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I resonate so much with what you said of like just trying to tell stories, that's literally what I'm trying to do as well. Like, that's why there's articles there that I've contributed to, people saying that I'm like expert, and I'm always going like, just don't call me an expert because there's no such thing. Every time that I feel like I know something, it's like, no, I need to go talk to somebody to humble me because I know I don't know anything yet. And it's this ever learning thing that agave spirits, I think, have. And it's a culture. It's not just a spirit. It's not just this distilling thing. It's a culture, and it's a diverse culture in every state that I've been to where there is a mezcal production. Like there's different thoughts and ideas and production methods that each state has, and it's this thing it's ever changing, and you're always learning. And I'm never blind to the privilege that I have, that I get to go to these places and document these things and share these stories. When I know a lot of people, won't be able to book that ticket, and if my content can bring, what I mean, some kind of presence for somebody to see that, and like I probably won't be able to, but I can see it through that, and have this admiration for agave spirits because of what I do. That's already a gift in itself, and I'm not shy of that privilege to be able to live between Mexico and the U.S. either. So I appreciate those words, and being a guide is awesome to hear, but it's also, it has this pressure, of I'm being a guide and I'm just showing people what this is like. It's not about me. It's about the people that are making these spirits, which I think, again,
Yeah,
Wild Coleman has always had
yeah,
the DNA in it.
for sure. And
Yeah.
I'm proud to create awareness about the people we work with as well. And I'm not beating my
Hmm.
chest that it's because of me. And I
Yeah.
think that's important. Um, that communication works between both cultures, like in the opposite direction as well. So I think what you're doing is also creating a buzz. And I don't know if maybe I'm not on TikTok. I would
Hmm.
have a seizure, but do you do any videos there that are just in Spanish?
I don't, man. And to be honest with you, it's something that me and my wife, who's like my producer, manager, everything, we've been talking about. If I really want to tell these stories and educate people about agave spirits, then I need to do videos in Spanish because I need to educate the people that are there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not just the people
And
that
that's
speak
what
English.
we said a little bit before maybe camera flipped on that I think you are putting a spotlight on arguably the best spirits on earth. I'm going to say
Hmm.
it.
Yeah,
But
agreed.
I'm watching when I go down every time, and this is anecdotally, but looking around the bars and restaurants and
Hmm.
looking at and I said this earlier, but looking at the 25 to 35-year-olds who are really proud to be ordering Siembra Valles Ancestral or
Right.
Cascoin or Once Bricks and sit at a bar and sip it and talk about it, or a Raicilla, which has normally
Hmm.
been like, nah, not, I'm not drinking that. I'll drink an American whiskey, but that's moonshine from the countryside. People are now paying a premium for
Right.
to drink and sip on a hopo. So I think it'd be really interesting. It might just be worth exploring it further. And I would be super supportive of that idea because I know you've got eyes on you.
Appreciate it.
And as I think this category is blowing up in the US, I'm seeing just this resurgence of cultural identity and pride
Hmm.
in the hometown spirits in El Arenal and in Jalisco and in Guadalajara. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm seeing it's like two movements that I'm seeing, especially being able to be in both cultures, you know. One is like the Mexican American population in the US of like first generation or even second generation sons of immigrants that came, and they kind of want to like, I don't know, go back to or like have this respect to their roots and their parents' roots. So I call it usually that there's been two booms of tequila. So the first boom of tequila is like we talked about. It was just about getting drunk and how tequila was the end of the party and all those kinds of things. This second boom they're experiencing now is the quality stuff. So it's about the culture and the additive free and that kind of stuff. And I really feel like the Mexican American community, and which to be fair, it's 99% of my friends and family here in the US, they want to, they're longing to know that. And then there's the people in Guadalajara itself who they're so close to tequila and Arandas and those major towns that they're going back as well to what tequila is. My biggest gripe with these big brands that are putting out tequilas everywhere is that not just because it's a bad product, but they're changing people's perspective of what good tequila is. So people were used to drinking the tequilas that are overly sweet, that are giving you a headaches, and they thought that's what tequila is, and a lot of people still do. But to get to go to like what Freddie is doing at El Gallo Tanero, which one of the best bars in Latin America recently, and really putting these spirits for Mexicans that are in Guadalajara, and like you said, the age group between 25-35 that are really, really admiring great agave spirits, and also tourists that are coming in who are trying to learn as well, And the bar scene in Colonia Americana and what Freddie has done and what Chava has done, and being able to see Cascawin at almost every restaurant. Doesn't have to be a cocktail bar or something that's known. Like you can go to those, bars that are
Yeah.
more about clubs and stuff like that. And I'm seeing Cascawin on the menu. I'm like, yes, like people are
Yeah.
going back to knowing what good tequila is and changing their perspective. But
They're at a Shake Shack now in Guadalajara.
dude, it's awesome. I didn't even know that. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
love
think
that.
I think you're on it though, and like there's this interesting in between generation of like maybe the parents immigrated and the kids were
Hmm.
born here, or some of my friends came across the border when they were 2
Right,
and grew up here, but still aren't citizens, which is
right,
fucked.
right.
Um, and the ability to have these spirits be something that they're proud of to reconnect the dots,
Very
I
true.
think is just amazing. It's
Hmm.
so cool, man. So I think it works both ways. I really do. And I think the influence that you're putting out in the world, the education, um, it'd be cool to see it done. I don't know
Hmm.
anybody else that's, you know, telling stories on both sides,
Hmm.
but the resurgence and the popularity of this cultural drink in Guadalajara, I think, is just something to be celebrated in and of itself.
Absolutely.
On our label, actually, the what looks like a W. Some people don't know what it is, but it's a bird. It's a red-tailed
Oh yeah.
hawk,
Hmm.
and that I drew as inspiration from something that connected the two cultures. So that's a bird that lives in Wyoming in the summertime, where I'm from, and migrates to Mexico in the wintertime.
Oh,
Um, and it felt like it was a really cool visual representation of something that didn't have a border and connected two cultures. And I think you're also that. You can connect
hmm.
on both sides with legitimacy. Um, and you have the microphone, you have the audience. I think that's really cool, man.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. And I do want to focus a little bit more in like doing Spanish content. And because I see the need, and it's awesome that Guadalajara is this little, not a little pocket, it's a huge city, but like this pocket in Mexico of having, easy to find great agave spirits, mostly tequila, of course, but I'm hoping getting to see it more done in Mexico City and in Monterrey and the bigger cities, and then trickling down to the smaller towns. And again, like us living in Uruapan, we have our little family now that they're picky about what they're drinking. It's not just about Don Julio 70 and the Cristalinos and stuff like
Right.
that. And they're like, oh no, yeah, now it was funny because like a year ago, we were drinking and they were drinking the stuff that most people drink there, the Cristalinos, the other brands. And it was really wild comment that I had it in a little birthday party last year, and they tried it and they're like, "Oh, it doesn't taste like it doesn't have that cotton candy taste." And I was like, "Yeah, exactly, because this is what it's supposed to be." And now we go there
Like sit
and they're
just
showing us,
just have a seat for 2 hours. I want to tell
exactly,
a story.
exactly. Let me tell you why it's like this.
Yeah.
That's
The
definitely me.
bottle's gone. You're standing up. Everybody is sitting down like, oh my God.
Yeah, I've been guilty of that a couple of times for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No
But
doubt.
now, like, we get to go
But yeah,
and they
you're
show us, like, oh, we bought this bottle of, Siete Leguas or other additive free brands. And I'm like, God, I hope this goes further and that more Mexicans can admire, what real agave spirits are.
and I think you're seeing that pop. There's other
Mm.
bars, Farmacia Rita Perez as an example,
Farmacia is
that
awesome.
like I think they only have Mexican owned
Right.
brands in there.
Yeah, I think so. And they have a certain
Maybe
number, right? They
Vago.
rotate.
Yeah, maybe Vago, but Judah is married to a woman in Oaxaca, and like, um, yeah, I mean, you go in there and you're like, okay, they get it. This is awesome,
Yeah,
and this is just the beginning,
exactly.
you know.
Exactly. And then there's
And
like
at
Peter
Gallo too. I mean,
Brown
there's a
and,
line out the
yeah,
yeah, there's a line out the door to
always.
get into these bars.
Oh, and it's awesome to see that it's like mostly young locals that are waiting to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because Colonia Americana is a neighborhood that's very touristy. There's a lot of people. You hear different languages as you're walking by. I love it. But it's fun to see that you go to Gallo. Most of the crowd there are young Mexicans that are drinking good stuff. You know. So what Freddie has
yeah,
done for that area, what Freddie has done with El Gallo is awesome. And I got to hang out with him a couple of weeks ago, and go down in his basement and try some, hapo and that kind of stuff, some puntas of some uh, amazing things that he found up in the mountains of Jalisco. So yeah, it's a good scene over there.
absolutely. So talk a little bit. You just had the privilege to go up to the new Tequila Ocho distillery.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? I saw you and a handful of other influencers were asked to visit this grand opening.
Yeah. So yeah, the Camarenas family, they host, I don't know how they did it, man, but I think they had like 10 days of straight parties for different crowds. So like first it was like distributors, and then it was like bartenders, and then it was like, us. And they had family stuff. So long story short, they Ocho has moved distilleries, so it had been made at La Oteña for since it started, and now it has its own distillery with Curado. And yeah, it's a big place, man. I want to say that when it's all said and done, it's probably going to be bigger than La Oteña.
Wow.
It's a beautiful distillery. They will have a restaurant. It's the destination, which I kind of love. I think it's going to bring a lot of people to Arandas. I think tequila has had, for the longest time, all the tourists go to tequila. And Arandas is this place. It's like this little town that's not, about an hour and a half away from Guadalajara. And it wasn't this destination like tequila is. And I think Ocho might be starting to make it into a destination because there's an amazing restaurant. There is a great bar that's called La Cantina de Don Tomas, which is honoring, Tomas Estes, who was the starter um, of Ocho and Curado. Curado was his last thing, and got to go there with Jesse, who's his son, who's a friend now, and get to, tour the distillery with Carlos. Carlos just telling, he's like a really great metaphor kind of guy. So he was like giving us all these metaphors that he was talking about the production of tequila. And then the real amazing part is that he set us all down after lunch, and he was like, "There's no such thing as free lunch. You guys are now gonna pick the blend of the 2023 puntas, which is insane. We had like I got to try Ocho at 71% ABV, and it was incredible. And bringing down the proof, as tequila has to be at the most 55, so we had to bring it down the proof, and getting to actually see how much water affects a tequila, I think was like such a one of those moments that I was like, oh yeah, I don't know anything.
Yeah.
So Carlos was like doing the calculations, and we had a little dropper, and he was like, okay, now put 3 drops of this water into the tequila glass that you have. And then like I would think, okay, I added more water, so it's just not, it's going to be more watered down, right? And no, it was like, wait, now this is spicier. And then the other
Right.
one's like, now I taste
It's
all
like it,
fruit, you
yeah,
know?
opens it up even more sometimes. You're
It's,
like,
yeah,
what?
it,
Yeah.
it was one of those like head scratching moments, and I'm like, what is happening? Like whatever I thought was the process, this is not it. Like water brings out flavors and brings out more flowers or more pepper. So that was super fun, and it's awesome to see too. You know, the everybody is expanding, man. Like I've been to distilleries for the past 2 years, and everybody's expanding. So I hope that the industry can take the boom that's happening, the demand that's happening, but to see Ocho and the production that they have is was pretty amazing.
And it's as some context for the Sip Outsider uh, listeners. Tequila Ocho was founded by Carlos Camarena, co-founded by a gringo named Tomas Estes,
Hmm.
and he owned a number of bars in England, I think, right?
And he
Agave
started
bars
in
in England.
Amsterdam and then started going
Okay,
all over Europe. Yeah.
and so they were the first guys to really start talking about terroir
Right.
and to put on the label where the agave was from, that every batch was different, and really emphasize it's not going to be the same every time you buy it.
Hmm.
You're not going to get the same product in Miami as you will in Paris as you will in Rio. It's going to be different, and
Right.
that's a good thing.
Exactly.
And so I think a lot of credit has to be given to both Tomas and to Carlos for leading that charge.
Hmm.
And it must have, I don't know, but it must be somewhat like not some closure, but I mean, how does Carlos feel like to see the completion of this new facility,
Hmm.
his additive free, terroir driven,
Right.
small project had such global success that they built
Right.
a big new facility? I mean, how did he respond?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the whole thing, we got to hang out with their whole Camarena family, and with
Yeah.
Jesse again, and I've had a few conversations with Jesse and about that and the impact that his dad had in the spirit world, right? Like as I get to be more and more in this industry, not just agave, but like the spirit industry, I've heard people from rum and whiskey just like having this really emotional conversations about Tomas and what he meant to them, so I think it's a testament to that. What's happening with Ocho, I think it's a lot of testament what Tomas Estes had and the impact he had in this industry as a whole. Again, not just agave, but everything. And I think for Carlos and the Camarenas and now Jesse to carry on that torch. And now, I think a lot of people are like, I've had people, saying, well, now that they're in a bigger production and they have a bigger brand, Ocho recently sold to Haven Hill. Do we need to be worried? And from seeing the love and the passion and the pride that they have behind that, I really don't think we need to be worried. I think just more people are going to be able to enjoy more great tequila, and that's a win for me for sure.
And I think there's also a natural, I mean, I don't know how Carlos is, but I think there's a natural passing of the torch to some degree.
Sure.
And, for it to occur in a new location, for
Hmm.
Jesse to be there, for you to be there, I'll call like the young blood, the influencers now, to be there and to experience it. I mean, I think that's really cool. It's like sort of completes the loop or the mission that those guys were on, which is to share these spirits with the world.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And we just get to do it in a bigger audience, like, and it's to be able to be called and go there and be part of this like new beginning was awesome in itself. But we get to tell the stories, and it's I don't know if I love the the word influencer, but it is right. We get to influence people with what we do, and it's just gotta always make sure that you're doing it right and you're telling stories, and it's not about you. At least that's my view of it.
And where does that hard wiring come from with you? I mean, you have like principled position on things
Mm,
that puts the producer first, that puts the Mexican culture first, or wherever you may be traveling, be
yeah,
it South America, Brazil,
right.
whatever you're sharing, Pisco, whatever you're sharing, it
Hmm.
seems like you do it. It's not about you. Where does that come from? I mean, you take that responsibility seriously.
It's a great question. I think a lot to do with my upbringing. My dad was always working in nonprofit organizations all over the world. So I grew up with my dad literally, traveling 3 months out of the year, 6 months out of the year was pretty normal. And he wouldn't go to the pretty parts. He would always go to like, people that needed more need. And I think he would always tell me that it's like I'm telling their story. Like I'm not. It's not the savior complex of I'm going there and I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna make them better, or I'm just gonna go there for a photo op, or it was always like, no, I'm in the background. This is about them. It's about kind of what you said before. I'm going there and saying, what do you need, or do you need anything, or do you want help or not? So I grew up with my dad being all over the world, and our house was almost like a hotel. Like every weekend, there was somebody from some part of the world staying with us, which we got to sit down and break bread together. And I would hear, as a kid, would hear their stories, and I was always exposed to culture, which is again a privilege that I'm not blind to at all, to be able to grow up in that. So I think that was so ingrained in me that I was like, this is not about me; it's about telling people stories. Um, and I've always been a storyteller. I've always loved hearing stories and telling stories. And I've always had this thing of like this integrity. And I think for me, even when I first started making content, to be honest with you guys here, it's tough to say no to some brands that are coming in, and I don't agree with what they're doing, but they have a big budget. But money was never a goal, right? It was just being, having this credibility that I feel like I built and talking about the spirits that I love. It's so easy for you to change that and go to the other route because it's, money talks. And for me, I think it's always been such a huge thing for me that it's not about the money. It's about telling people stories, and which has worked out. Just to say that this is my full time job is something that I never planned, but I love it.
Yeah, and I think that authenticity, that long-term perspective pays off. You're
Hmm.
surrounded by other people who are watching.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
watching, and vice versa. You're watching me. Is he true
right,
to his word?
right.
And I think that that's a unique thing in this industry. The agave spirits community, where it's like, all right, what's the special release next from
Hmm.
Cascaween? What's you know who's doing what next, and there's a little bit of that competition, but it's all internal, and it's all um, like you're supporting your friends to some degree,
Right.
so long as they're in the circle of people who truly give a shit. And it's like you're holding a standard, and you're being held to that standard by
Absolutely.
those that really care about you. I think that's really cool.
It is. That's very true, man. The more I hang out with, people in the industry, the more I realize that it's a tight knit family. That there is drama, but there is this camaraderie, and everybody knows each other, and there's gossip and that kind of stuff. But in
Alcohol and egos? No. What do you
no,
mean
right?
drama?
Never happens.
And that's changing too, like I referenced early on. The all the younger female producers, the female brand owners,
Right.
having a voice at the table in a traditionally
Absolutely.
patriarchal society, I
Right.
think is incredible. Look at what Graciela is doing.
Right.
um,
Or even
One of
Miriam
many
with
funny.
Charanda.
Yeah,
Um,
Funny Camarena.
Funny, exactly. Hmm.
It's a changing landscape, a dynamic landscape, and I think it's a really exciting time to be in agave spirits.
It is. It is. Yeah. Yeah. I hope we can keep up with the demand, or they can keep up with the demand. But it's definitely that was one of my worries. But I think there are brands that are doing great things, like you said, what Graciela has been doing with Raminero, and again, we talked about it earlier too, of bringing back these like agaves that people weren't using or extinct, and medium with Charanda, which is a rum from Michoacan essentially, and she just released 5 different expressions, and a few of those were sugar canes that were extinct, and it's wild. It's something that I've never tried with any sugarcane distillate. So women are definitely having an amazing voice in Mexican spirits in general, which is exciting to see too.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, man.
All right, well,
Awesome.
let's try like a couple rapid fires here.
Tell me.
What are what are three trends in the agave spirits world that you think will grow in 2023?
Mm. Um, I think wine finished tequilas. So I think we're gonna start seeing a lot more rosas, or that kind of trend is going to stay for a little bit. Um, let's see. I think we're gonna start seeing more high proof stuff. So people are seeing that there's a market for the still strengths. Exactly, same. That I think a lot of brands were scared to put steel strength because people weren't buying it, but there's definitely a market for either puntas or steel strength, which I'm all for. I'm excited for that. Um, and the third one, uh, man, trying to think. I don't.
We can come back to it. You
Yeah, I'm
you
not
can
sure. I think those are
you
the
can
two
phone a
ones that
friend.
like. Yeah, I'll phone a friend, but I'm like, I think those are the two that I'm pretty excited about. Like, at least the steel strength that I'm excited about. Um, yeah, and I mean, at least those two are good things. There's maybe some other bad stuff that I'm not a fan of,
What
but
about
I think we're gonna start
what
seeing.
about like three aged expressions most people don't know about? You referenced, certainly the wine
Uh,
barrel stuff. People are like, huh? I don't think a lot of people know about them.
right.
But what are like three aged
Yeah. So.
expressions if you're going to say, okay, you got, we'll say a Rosa, a Repo, and an Añejo,
Hmm.
and they're a good
Hmm.
reflection of what that category can be? What do
Yeah. Just brands
yeah,
that
yeah,
I think are doing it. Yeah.
three aged expressions like
Um.
not to miss.
So I think coming from Cascawin as well, I think Montagave is one that is just slightly aged in wine barrels, so they're all still blancos, so they're in barrels less than 59 days, and I think one of them is like actually 15 days. So I think those are great. I think you get a little bit of like that hint of the wine, like a little fruity with Cascawin tequila that of course we all love. I think Cascanes, especially with the new distillery that they're moving to as well, I think they're going to start coming out with some really exciting malolactic funkiness that, again, I really, really enjoy, which might be a new trend. There's a bunch of people doing the funky stuff
Yeah.
too, which I'm all for. um, and, I think, try again, I'm much more of a
I
Blanco
know, me
drinker.
too.
Yeah. But of course, there's some great age stuff there too. But 99.9% of the time, if I'm drinking something, I'm drinking Blanco or Oven.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and let's see, trying to think of like something that is doing some fun
I
aging.
mean,
Um,
I'm starting to see sort of a new super luxury XA thing popping.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I, Volan's put out a 6-year XA. I'm sure it's incredible.
Hmm.
G4 put out,
Yeah, I haven't tried
the
that one
G4
yet.
is 5 or
Hmm.
6-year XA?
6 2.
6. And then
Yeah,
El Tesoro put out their 85th anniversary. And
right.
all of these are in like the Blantons and above price point. Um, I think we're going to see
Exactly.
more come out in that category.
Ah, yeah. I think it's a trend. I think we're gonna start seeing a lot more $500 bottles of
Yeah.
X which it feels like everybody that's what they're doing, right? Like what the three brands that you said, they're all in that level of around $500.
Yeah.
Which, if you got the money, cool. It's not something that I'd spend money on, but I also know that these brands are that's what they're selling in the aftermarket. So the brands are like, well, if these guys are buying our product and selling for that much, why shouldn't we? But
Yeah, I mean, any XA I've had from El Pandillo, the Pasote XA, um,
hmm.
in that beautiful box with the big glass
Right,
bottle, or sorry, the glass bottle with like the silver top on it, silver and
right,
glass
right.
top. Anything from El Pandillo,
Hmm.
insane. um, and
Yeah,
and I think
absolutely.
we're just starting to see the beginning of super premium age stuff, and hopefully some of
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
high, some of
yeah.
it's high
Puente
proof.
Seca was the brand that, yeah, which would be cool to see. Like I said, I'm more of a Bronco drinker. I feel like for me, after 6, 7 years, I don't know if you needed to age that long. Does it become a whiskey at that point because of the so how oaky it can get? But yeah, I do think that we're gonna start seeing a lot more than that. It's gonna take a while, right? Because like G4 already said that the añejo that's out is the añejo that's out for the next year or
Oh
so,
wow.
and these brands also, yeah, they can't keep up with the aging either. So But I do think that we're going to start seeing a lot more $500 bottles of XAs
And then
in the
I
next
think
few years.
on the other end, another trend I'm going to reference will be the Once Bricks that I see in the background. I'm trying to point to it, but that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
There it is.
Yeah.
And that was an exploration in fermentation, and to see
Right.
other blancos that come out that are experimenting with water sources like Felipe Camarena does, or fermentation like
Mm-hmm.
Chava did. To me, that's just all really exciting. Or Caballito Cerrero being a
Yeah.
destilado, not a tequila.
Right.
I think we're going to see a bunch more blancos come
Mm-hmm.
out that are new, funky, experimental, and to me, that's really exciting. And you can spend $50 to
Same.
$70 on it, and not, you don't have to break the bank, and you get to have something totally
Exactly.
new, totally unique. Aged in wine barrels is a great example. I
Exactly.
think that's super cool. I'm all for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I
I
think
love the
it's,
weird stuff.
yeah, me too, man. And me, exact. Same here. Like, if you can, think outside the box and experiment and still respect it and all that, I'm all for it. And I think because of this, like, boom that's happening, a lot more people are enjoying more Blancos. And I think brands are like, oh, now we can experiment with this. We don't have to just put it in a barrel and call it an XA, because that's what most people are drinking, right? A lot of the people now are like, they want the weird stuff. And uh, I love the funkiness, like, the La Venenosa Sierra del Tigre is one of my favorites ever. You can probably not drink, more than 2 ounces of that one because you smell like cheese for the rest of the day. But it's a great
It's
product.
just cool to see some brands embracing that. You referenced one, Cascanes. They just moved from one
Hmm.
distiller to the other. Do you want to talk a little bit about like what happens when a tequila
Yeah.
brand moves? And I just have a lot of respect for them, knowing some of the guys from their team who I adore, and
Hmm.
they've been willing to push it from day one of like, we're just going to put it out at still strength, and guess what? We're going to ferment
Right.
differently, and that's us. Do you want to talk
Hmm.
a little bit about what
Exactly.
happens? Like, you're changing everything. How do you maintain DNA when you
Right.
change distilleries?
Right. Yeah, that was such a huge thing for Cascanes, man. And again, I got to go down there a couple weeks ago and with John Paul and Jose. I know you know Jose too
Yeah,
because he told me that
great guy.
he was the one that shipped me the bottles to Michoacan.
Yep.
um, yeah, great dudes. And so yeah, I think Cascanes is really what happened. And Tequila Matchmaker put out a video saying it to it. They had like a 600% growth in the last 2 to 3 years, right? So they needed more, and the distillery that they were at previously just couldn't keep up with the demand. So they needed a bigger house, and it's kind of like John Paul from Cascanes also said. It was like the same team, just a different kitchen with brand new toys, and that's what they get to do. And I think that DNA of experimentation that Cascanes has always had was a huge thing that they wanted to keep. But they were also constricted in the new older distillery because the older distillery only had roller mill and a autoclave, and a side note, Cascanes was really the tequila for me that changed my perspective of autoclaves. I had this like standoffish thing with
Yeah, but they
autoclaves, but
do
when I
like
tried it, I was
they
like,
do low
it's
pressure, so yeah,
exactly,
they're like
exactly,
lulling it through the
so,
autoclave. It's not like cranked.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's not an Instapot, right? It's
yeah,
like a slow cooker.
yeah.
um, and yeah, so the Cascanes wanted to bring that DNA to the new distillery, and they looked everywhere, and then they found T-Tap, which is where Tres Agaves is made, where Híjole is made, some other, good additive, confirmed additive-free brand, particular matchmaker as well. And, they were able to bring the same master distiller. So Don Chico is still the distiller for them. They brought Nestor, which is their chemist, so the same guy as well. The autoclaves are a little bit bigger, but they're doing the same amount of agaves, and they're doing it in the same pressure that they had before. Essentially, they're doing the same exact thing in a bigger scale. The only difference that they're going to have is that it is distilled in stainless steel, but it is going to be in copper coils. So there's a little bit difference, which I think is
Yeah,
a win. You
should
know
be a
what I
good
mean?
thing.
It's a
Yeah.
better thing. It's a better change.
And Don
Yeah,
Chico came
yeah.
over. They brought the
But
proprietary recipe. I mean, I'm excited for them, and I'm excited that
exactly,
they're experimenting.
me too.
Like you said, there's new things they can try. Stone brick ovens, Tohonas, and to me, new
Hmm.
expressions is just exciting.
Exactly, exactly. That's
I
what the fun part. Now
I
they get to experiment with that.
I track it all on like Tequila Matchmaker, and I'm seeing Sip Outsider hint at what they're going to be releasing in terms
Yeah.
of like tasting notes and process. And it sounds like there's an element of it being able to also provide feedback and recommendations. So I don't know when that's going to
Hmm.
drop, if they can link out to it or tell us a little bit more, but I'm super excited to be able to track it and compare like the old
Yeah.
distillery to the new and tasting notes. I think that'll be
Right.
super fun.
Yeah, I think that's part of what like I really like what Outsider is doing. The next things that are coming up are going to be super exciting, and not just like a database and recommendations and that kind of those things that you mentioned, but like there's like forum and message based and things that you can keep in touch with people.
Yeah,
I think a lot of the people that are getting to tequila, they're missing that. Sure, they can watch my videos, and there's other creators that are doing the same thing as well, but to have this community I think is what Outsider is going to do, which I think is going to be super exciting in the next, few months and then years of people that you get to talk to people and have conversations like we are now, but with different people in the
that's
industry. Would be
awesome.
cool. I think people are going
And
to love it.
getting back to where the conversation started, that's what it's about.
Yep,
You know,
it's very
bringing
true.
people
It's what
together,
you share it with.
talking story and having a laugh and unwinding over these spirits. I mean, that's the best part.
So, Andy, I also got to do a rapid fire for you. It's like 3 or 4 craziest shoots you've ever done for Nat Geo.
Well, the first one was, like I told you, I got a voicemail that asked if I wanted to go to Mount Everest,
Right.
and I said yes. And that was 85 days long in a tent on a glacier. I think I had like 4 showers,
Wow.
and trying to manage everything on solar and send video and photos back to Washington D.C. because Instagram had just come out. It was, well, I guess not just come out, but it was 2012, and it was just starting to kind of like pop. Um, that was probably the craziest. I lost 25 pounds, came home just like, whoa, do I have PTSD? Yeah, I think I do.
It's crazy.
It was wild, man. Like, it was really humbling. The Sherpa culture is incredible, hardworking. People died that year, and there were human beings in crevasses, like, and you're navigating around them. It was otherworldly for sure. Another shoot. What else? I went down to the French Polynesia to a black pearl farm. So they actually take oysters, pearl oysters, and inside them they insert a little nucleus.
Okay.
And after 2 years, it turns into a big black pearl, the size of an eyeball. So you're free diving underwater and spearfishing, and that was an entirely different skill set of holding your breath and taking the camera underwater. Went out to the Arctic Wildlife Refuge in Alaska, documenting the rate of glacial change. Man, it's a long list. A
Wow.
bunch of commercial shoots too, which
Mhm.
were really cool. But yeah, that's part of the DNA of like the wild and the wild common was, my rock climbing friends, the Agave Spirits community, the plants, the maguey. I think we're all just cut from a little bit of a different cloth.
Right.
And like that's sort of our community. And then the common part is what we're doing. It's coming together, sharing spirits, talking story, and laughing. And I just felt like that was a cool marriage, and that's my wild part of why the name is what the name is. It's just like I'm a little bit different. That's fine.
Yeah. Love that. I love
A little bit,
that.
little bit feral. Best kept outdoors. But just embrace that. And and earlier on, we were asked during the interview, like, if you want to say something or rephrase it, and I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm just going to be myself, and nobody else is an expert on that, and so I'm just going to be honest and be myself.
Love it.
And I've learned to like really embrace that. I see you doing that as well, and like I said, I have a ton of respect for what you're doing. I can see that your father ingrained, good values, and you're extending that into the brands that you work with, and how you're communicating with all of us, and how we're all learning from you. I'm learning from you. So yeah, I want to thank you for, being a part of the community and leading the charge. You're part of the young blood, man.
Oh man, thank you. I mean, it means so much coming from somebody like you, who's so involved in the industry and doing the things the right way. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate that, and again, it's just telling stories, and if people want to listen to it, I'll talk their ears off, like we said, at a bar, and I'll be the guy telling you why you should care about what's in your drink for 2 hours when you just want to have a tequila soda.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, man. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for sharing, Wild Common and the things that are important to you. And this was an awesome conversation. I hope we get to meet somewhere around the world at one point, hopefully in Mexico. Uh, you
I
know,
think it'll be I think it'll be soon in Mexico.
yeah,
I'm just guessing.
yeah, I did too. We gotta go. Yeah, we'll
But
share at your
I'm looking
gathering, man.
forward to it. Yeah, we've got a couple cool new things up our sleeve too as a brand in the next year or
Cool.
two. So definitely
Awesome.
stay tuned. Would love to have you to the distillery at some point. Take some pictures and sample a couple of things that we're working on.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, we're always there. So let me know for sure. But thanks for doing this,
All
man. It
right.
was great meeting you.